if a part that you paid for that was used in a collision repair of your vehicle suddenly became decertified, would that be information that you'd want to know? The question we're asking today is, who's going to tell you? Hey everybody, welcome back to the Airing of Grievances. My name is Eric Reamer, and as you can see, this is not our normal set. Rob's out of town this week, and so you've got me, and my job is to get you some information that might be very useful for you, especially if you, the consumer, have had your vehicle repaired and they used aftermarket or salvaged parts. The article that I will be citing today is written in Repair Driven News. The headline reads, Kappa decertifies 9 parts in March and April. So the reason I'm bringing this article to you is from time to time we talk about and remind the consumer that Kappa, the Certified Automotive Parts Association, from time to time drops certifications. That is, they discontinue certifications. They rarely tell us why, and I think I could probably end that sentence by saying they rarely tell us. They tell the 3 reporting agencies, and we're going to talk a little bit about them, and that is passed down into a report form that gets shipped out to body shops, collision centers all around the country. But they don't have to tell you. And so it raises the question that I posed in the beginning of this video. If you paid for parts that were certified for whatever value that certification holds through Kappa, and then suddenly become decertified, who's going to tell you? And as far as I know, the answer is not very many people at all. I know that Rob and I have had this conversation a number of different times over the years, and it serves as a good reminder to go over this again because these decertifications actually happen on a regular basis. And as you can see, as we discuss the article, they happen with very popular vehicles. And of course, the great majority of the collision centers here in America, for sure, are in partnership with the various insurers. And because of that, they don't have the option to put anything other than what their insurance partner demands they put on. And in many cases, I could even say most cases, that ends up being your aftermarket, salvage, and used parts. So let's take a look at the article and see what Teresa brings to us today. It says, Kappa decertifies 9 parts in March and April. Keep in mind that just in January, 9 other parts were decertified by Kappa. So we're looking at 18 parts that were decertified in the year-to-date calendar 2025. The Certified Automotive Parts Association, Kappa's decertified parts reports for March and April lists 9 different parts for decertification. And between the 2 reports, 1 standard metal and 8 standard plastic parts have been decertified. 4 of the parts were manufactured by Tongyang. We've talked about them in the past. 2 by YCC, that's another company overseas that makes these aftermarket parts. 1 by AP Procom, and then 1 by ProFortune, and another one by Gordon. I'm not going to get into the details of these various companies. We see the name Tongyang a lot with the aftermarket parts. They're a big supplier of aftermarket parts, and then many times their parts get decertified, which draws into question in my mind, how good are the parts that they are certifying, Kappa certifying, if they are continuously being decertified. They don't go into the details of what causes the decertification, just that, hey, they were, and now they're not. So let's talk about some of the vehicles that are affected and the parts that are in question for these two particular reports. That's the March and April 2025 reports. The first one up is a metal part. It is the Honda HR-V model year 16 to 22. It is a right fender, and that part has been decertified. Again, this is for this particular brand, Honda HR-V, 16 through 22. That's the model years that are affected. And as you can imagine, that's a lot of cars. That probably means that there are a lot of cars running around here in America that have these parts on them, in this case, a right fender, that has been decertified. And you're probably not going to hear about it unless you are a collision center owner or manager. Here's another one for you. The model year 21 through 23 Hyundai Elantra, and it is a bumper cover for the rear bumper. It's a plastic part made by Tongyang, and it has been decertified. Another one is having to do with the Lexus RX 350 from model years 13 through 15, 2013 through 2015. And this includes the F-Sport package without parking assist. So very specific models, however, very popular vehicles. And the front bumper cover has been decertified by the Kappa organization. Let's take a look at some others. Honda Civic Coupe from 12 to 13. That's model year 2012 to 2013. A front bumper cover has been decertified. Here's the Hyundai Elantra again, model years 21 through 23. And this has to do with the rear bumper cover, and it's for the models that don't have the parking sensors. That bumper cover has been decertified. The Lincoln MKZ Hybrid, model years 2013 to 2015, with or without signature lighting, that bumper cover, front bumper cover, has been decertified. Model year 20 to 21 Toyota Corolla sedans in the model version of L, LE, XLE, those vehicles have been affected by the decertification of a front bumper cover. Same thing with the Toyota Corolla model year 20 to 24, the SE and XSE model, bumper cover, front, discontinued. I shouldn't say discontinued, decertified. And therein lies the issue, right? It's not discontinued, it's just lost its certification. And I guess that poses the question, do certifications matter? We think so. But not necessarily Kappa certifications. We believe that the certifications that you should be concerned about involve the OEM, the original equipment manufacturer. And the reason that we take that stance is because they're the ones who did the research and development. They're the ones who put in the millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars in diagnosing whether or not these are going to be a good fit and are they going to work properly with the ADAS systems and the sensors and the LiDAR and radar and all the other things that are going on just behind those front or rear bumper covers. The Toyota CHR model year 18 to 19, that front lower bumper cover has been decertified. And again, the reason we bring all this up is because this happens all the time. Parts, in particular, these aftermarket or in some cases salvage parts, are certified by Kappa for whatever reason, for whatever criteria, and then at some point they become decertified by Kappa. And they won't tell you. All they do is produce this report. Well, Teresa, who did the article here, she started asking the information providers. Now, in the collision industry, there are 3 different information providers. That is Auditex, CCC, and Mitchell. And she asked if they actually update their systems when an aftermarket part has been decertified or, in some cases, recalled. I'm not aware of recalls in the aftermarket industry. It may happen. I'm just not aware of it. But this decertification process, like I said, has been happening on the regular for many, many years. Laura Weber, who is the CCC Public Relations Manager, replied to Teresa Moss's query and said the Kappa certification status comes directly from the parts supplier system. That is to say, CCC does not have to update this information. We display what's given to us by the supplier, and we don't alter or edit that data. That sounds an awful lot like, but I understand it, right? It makes sense to me because they are the middleman between the supplier, the parts supplier, and the repair shops. The repair shops do receive these reports of decertification, but we have raised the question multiple times, and we will raise it again today. Who are they telling? They are under no obligation to reach out and call their consumers, their guests, as we call them at Nylund's Collision Center. They're under no obligation to call them and say, hey, that bumper cover that we put on to repair your vehicle a couple of months ago, it's been decertified. And if they were to start making those phone calls, you can only imagine the volume of administrative nightmare that goes along with that whole process. Mitchell had a very similar response. They said that the aftermarket parts data serviced in Mitchell Solutions comes from third-party parts vendors. This by Katie Perini. She is the public relations for Mitchell. She says, since it's not authored by Mitchell, we don't alter the data that we receive from those vendors. So again, it gets back to the vendors of these parts. It's their responsibility. A lot of buck passing going on here, but it's their responsibility to make sure that everything is updated in their systems, the CCC and the Mitchell systems. Auditex is the 3rd major player in the information systems in the collision industry, and they did not choose to answer the question when it was posed to them. Teresa also sent an email to LKQ. LKQ Corporation is a leading provider of alternative aftermarket specialty salvage and recycled auto parts that services the repair and collision industry. And, Teresa reached out to them. They didn't respond. Now, if everybody's not going to respond to these things, or they're going to wipe their hands of the responsibility, then it kind of behooves the questioner to go back and ask directly to the source. Tong Yang, no response. How about the insurers that require the use of these parts? Progressive, Geico, Allstate, no response. Here's an interesting quote that comes directly out of the article. It says, State Farm has nothing to share with repair-driven news. That was State Farm's official response. Wow. Not so neighborly. Teresa makes a great point here in this article, and this is one of the points that we resonate with deeply. She says, when previously asked how the industry should use these part reports, the ones that come out and talk about the decertifications, if information providers receive the list and in return update their inventory and database, Kappa, remember the Certified Aftermarket Parts Association, responded that it does not have insight into how recipients use the reports. We produce the reports, we send them out, but we're not responsible for how people use them. It seems to me that we have just simply lost vision of what's truly important. And what's important, these parts being decertified, first of all, we could go back to saying these parts being used in the first place are probably not the ideal scenario for the proper repair, at least not from our perspective. We believe that the proper repair involves OEM parts and using the OEM procedures to install those OEM parts. We don't have enough time in this video to make you a list of the number of times when people use aftermarket or salvaged parts and they install them incorrectly or they don't fit properly, and so they're forced to fit, sometimes by cutting new holes or welding or riveting them in ways that are not necessarily supported by the OEM procedures. And, we talk about this all the time. How can that possibly be the best thing for you, the consumer? And our answer is it's not. But that's the type of thing that we're talking about here. Here's the most interesting quote in the entire article as far as I'm concerned, and it comes from a Kappa representative. It says, "As the industry understands, no manufacturing process is flawless. Even OEMs face challenges, as evidenced by weekly recall lists," Kappa said in an email. Kappa thoroughly investigates reported issues, addresses necessary corrections on a case-by-case basis. The major difference between what we just heard with that Kappa statement and what the OEMs are required to do is when the OEMs have a recall, the federal government mandates that they put those recalls out, and they continue to put those recalls out until the owner of the vehicle has addressed that by way of the recall, right? There's no such obligation from Kappa. They're going through the motions, but they don't appear to really have any sense of urgency or dispatch. I can recall when I had a Takata airbag recall on my Lexus SC430 hardtop convertible. And the recall was urgent in the sense that the manufacturer, Lexus, put out this recall. They sent postcards, they sent letters, they did everything they could do to contact me and others that own these vehicles, because if these airbags deploy, they could be lethal. And so on a regular basis, we'd get these notices saying, hey, you got to get this taken care of. You got to get this taken care of. Hey, did you know this thing is dangerous? You got to get this thing taken care of. And that's the responsibility of the manufacturer. Kappa puts out a report. So I'll go back to the question that I started with at the beginning of this video. If you paid for parts that were certified by Kappa and installed on your vehicle, and then at some point into the future, those parts become decertified, and nobody tells you about it, are you any safer for the process? Look, there's a couple of things that are at play here, and I'll wrap this video up with this. This is one side of a coin that is very much connected to the other side, which is the responsibility of the insurers. And the reason that there are so many aftermarket parts and that there's so much legislation going on all over the country talking about aftermarket parts, and it's not fair that the OEMs keep their intellectual property and their patents for as long as they do, and all of that sour grapes and whining comes because the insurer has it written in their policy. Most insurance policies have it in writing that you and they, the insurer, agree that it's okay for them to cut corners on quality by putting aftermarket or salvage parts on your vehicle, regardless of how old your vehicle is. We've had stories about vehicles being less than a week old, getting into an accident, and then the insurer says, we're only going to pay for a salvage or an aftermarket part. on a brand new, in some cases, luxury vehicle. It doesn't make a lot of sense to us. What does make sense is that you're still here at the end of this video hanging out with me. I didn't bring a coffee cup with me, but that's not going to stop me from saying happy Saturday to you. Thanks so much for joining us here at the Airing of Grievances. If you found value in this video, I hope you take a moment to take a look at the next one coming up. We want to say thanks again for being here, and we will see you again next Saturday.